Hello, welcome back to my channel, or if it's your first time here, welcome. Today I'll be reacting to A Beginner's Guide to When They Cry. Now, I do have to be upfront, I have watched all of the Higurashi series when I was way younger, I think like in middle school, and I also watched Umineko as well and read the manga, and I didn't really get to play it because at the time it was really hard to be able to find it in English translations, I suppose, back then. So that's what I consumed so far. So this is gonna be like a review, I guess, and also introductions to the other Higurashi stuff, I assume. Someone did recommend it to me, so I am very much looking forward to checking this out. But if you have visual novel related, I guess, lore and story video essays or review videos or anything like that, or any other kind of video that you'd like me to react to, then please be sure to comment down below. And if you do enjoy this video, then make sure to support the original video as well. And of course, if you enjoy my reaction, then be sure to comment your suggestions or what you liked about the video or anything along those lines. And also like and subscribe to my channel for more. But let's get started, okay?
This month saw the release of a game called Kikonia When They Cry Phase 1 for You the Replaceable Ones. This is the first in a new series by 7th Expansion. In itself, Kikonia is the 5th entry to the When They Cry series. That's a lot of words that might not mean anything to you.
Yeah,
in this video I want to address 3 questions. What is When They Cry? Why should you care? And where do you start? Because hopefully by the end I'll have convinced you this is an experience you definitely want in on.
Now I recognize her.
When They Cry is a visual novel series.
I definitely recognize her.
These are a kind of game, usually for PC, where the player input consists largely or solely of clicking through text. When They Cry has 3 major components or stories: Higurashi no Nakokoro ni, or When the Cicadas Cry, Umineko no Nakokoro ni, or When the Seagulls Cry,
those
and
two.
Kikonia no Nakokoro ni, or When
I don't
the
know that one.
Cry. More specifically, you have Higurashi and Higurashi Kai, Umineko and Umineko Chiru, and now Kikonia. Think of Kai and Chiru as sequels or even just second halves to their predecessors. This is how the 3 titles become 5 separate releases. Thus, When They Cry 5. The first 4 entries to the series, prior to Kikonia, were
so
themselves
colorful,
each released in 4 different episodes or arcs. To confuse things further, Higurashi is currently being released on Steam by Manga Gamer arc by arc, making for 8 separate releases, whereas Umineko had the first 4 bundled into one and the second 4 bundled into another, making for 2 longer and more expensive games, but still the same format. Still with me? Good. Time for some history. Our story starts back in the early 2000s with a man called Ryukishi07. Ryukishi is still a fairly elusive individual despite his fame and constant fan engagement, and we don't know a lot about his personal background. What we do know is that at some point in his mid to late 20s, he was working as a civil servant for the Japanese government and decided he wanted to do something different with his life.
I am quite surprised that there's not much information on this dude. Usually, like, when a series becomes famous, the person who creates it, typically, like, you would know exactly, like, their history and how they ended up creating the series. But it's interesting that his background isn't, like, fully known. It's quite refreshing in some ways, too.
Wanted to create something meaningful. This simple motivation gave birth to the Doujin Circle 7th expansion, comprised at the start of Ryukishi himself, his brother Yatazakura, and his best friend BT. They decided they wanted to make a game and sell it at Comiket. With well over 500,000 attendees at each biannual event, Comiket, or Comic Market, is estimated to be the largest fan convention in the world.
Clearly!
Think a humongous artist alley. Along with fan works, many original creators gather there to promote and sell their amateur products. In August 2002, 7th Expansion were among these young hopefuls, and attended to sell their game Higurashi no Nakokoro ni Onikakushi-hen. This was the first arc of the series, the Demoned Away arc. 7th Expansion returned to more or less every Comiket to sell the next 7 games in the series, finally completing it at the August 2006 event. So When They Cry is a visual novel series, right? Kind of. I lied earlier. Higurashi is actually classified as a sound novel, a term Ryukishi himself created to draw attention to the focus on creating atmosphere through sound rather than visuals. Seventh expansion were entirely without a budget going into this project.
I mean,
The
that
game
makes
was
sense.
programmed on the free software Nscripter. The music was royalty-free material found on an online database. Ryukishi took photographs himself to compose the backgrounds and drew all the art alongside writing the entire series. The game looked homemade, to put it nicely, and that first Comiket saw a grand total of 5 copies sold. Ryukishi equally went around shops in Akihabara trying to convince owners to buy some of his stock and was mostly turned down. Seventh expansion knew they were going to need every bit of positive publicity they could get. Moreover, they simply wanted people to enjoy the game they had created. They promised to give away further games in the series for free to anyone who would send them an email after playing Onikakushi letting them know their thoughts. And people did. That initial handful of fans took to online forums, they spoke to their friends, and word spread. Despite having everything stacked against it, anyone who played Higurashi was immediately able to tell the series was something special. Likewise, 7th expansion kept at it, and their hard work bore fruit. 17 years later, Higurashi has sold over 900,000 units in console ports across Japan alone, seen countless adaptations including multiple anime series, a manga, 2 live-action movies, and most recently
I didn't know
a
about the
TV
live-action.
2007 saw the release of Umineko, its spiritual successor.
I really liked Umineko.
And now, in 2019, 8 years after Umineko concluded, we finally have the third major entry, Kikonia, the first visual novel ever to receive a simultaneous Japanese-English release due to fan demand. So just what is it about this series that has allowed it to not only survive but thrive for all this time? To start at the most obvious place, When They Cry's plots are as gripping as they come. Higurashi is set in 1980s Japan in a small village, Hinamizawa. When Keiichi Maebara moves from Tokyo and becomes fast friends with his new schoolmates, all seems well. However, things take a horrific turn when the annual festival arrives and Keiichi discovers that recent years have brought murders and disappearances on the same night, somehow always related to the village's fervent worship of its god, Oyashiro-sama. The further Keiichi digs, the deeper he falls as he begins to question who and what he can trust. Umineko is equally set in Japan, just 3 years after Higurashi in 1986. This time we've got the elite Ushiromiya family gathering on their own private island, Rokkenjima, for their traditional yearly conference, the purpose of which is to essentially try and wring money out of each other. This time the hot topic is the imminent passing of the head of the family and how his wealth will be distributed amongst his 4 children. Said family head, the more than slightly senile Kinzo, is more interested in using the gathering as a proxy ceremony to summon the subject of his single-minded, mad obsession, the fabled golden witch Beatrice, who supposedly lurks on the island. When a typhoon shuts Rokkenjima off from the rest of the world and people begin to die in impossible occult-esque murders, the lines between fantasy and reality once again begin to blur. Finally, we have Kikonia, which jumps away.
I do have to say, though, out of the 2, I actually really enjoyed the aesthetics of Umineko a bit more. And it also felt a bit more refined storytelling-wise. You can tell Higurashi is a very good first project, but you can also tell that they improved a lot in Umineko, just from an overall story perspective, not the actual games, because like I said, I haven't played them, but I did watch and read them. So just from those, Higurashi does a very good job at, I guess, pulling someone into the world of the Higurashi series. And then Umineko does a very good job at showing just how much they learned and improved over the years from Higurashi and into Umineko.
Ahead to post-World War III society. Traditional militaries have been largely replaced with young soldiers called Gauntlet Knights, who contain all the might of a regular army and the technology attached to their arms. These Gauntlet Knights from all over the world come together to make a pact under their superiors' noses, not to meaninglessly kill each other, but to try and resist and change the system from within in the name of maintaining peace. This ideal is put to the ultimate test as the
I do have to say, I like how the art, even now, I guess, I don't really know how recent this game is, but I like how the fist is always the same. It's just a smaller size. It makes it funny, but also cute in some ways.
Outbreak of a fourth world war threatens and the world begins to collapse around them. To answer your question, yes, these stories are just as amazing and addictive as the hooks would suggest. Still, you might be wondering how they're linked. When They Cry is not a series of direct sequels so much as a meeting of ideas. When you line up all three, none of the base elements match, not the time periods, settings, or for the most part the characters. You might be thinking When They Cry is just a kind of collective name for all of 7th Expansion's releases, but in fact they've produced multiple other stories over the last 20 years, including some seemingly much more heavily related, yet still not considered a part of the When They Cry universe. There is no clear answer regarding what defines When They Cry, but in following the series through, you become vividly aware of certain messages, life lessons, conversations and debates Ryukishi07 seems to want to deliver or instigate. He often describes the series as a face-off between himself and the reader. Through the nature of their release schedule, Ryukishi spent his time writing these series, scouring forums for commentary and musings, just so that he could throw another red herring in here or obfuscate something that people were beginning to catch onto there. He would respond directly to the real-time conversation surrounding the series through it, without ever telling us directly what to think.
That's quite interesting.
He has a strong policy of encouraging all opinions and perceptions on and of his work without confirming or denying anything directly. It's a reading experience that defies description.
I actually think that's very smart, where he said that he treats it as discussion or argument or fight between himself and the reader, and him looking through the forums makes it an even more immersive experience as he continues to add on to the story. And I think that's what makes it even better than if he weren't doing that.
Experimental and deeply thought-provoking. If that's not enough to get you interested, don't worry, I haven't even started. While these stories are fascinating enough by virtue of their nature and conception, it's what lies at the heart of this series that really makes me want to thrust it into everyone's hands. That leads me perfectly to the next question. To answer this, I want to talk a bit more about what makes each of these individual stories tick. Higurashi doubles up as an extremely comprehensive examination of 1980s Japan, informed by Ryukishi's experience working for the government and the criticisms he wants to level at it. The topics explored include Japanese culture and history in general, but particularly how these were influenced by World War II, religion and superstition, political scandal, the development of biological weapons, the evolution and ethics of psychiatric treatment, organised crime and the relationship between the police and the Yakuza, civil disobedience, and social service infrastructure and failings. It's a deep dive into life in this one village, everything that has brought its inhabitants there, and how they function as a microcosm of society at large. It's a story of mutual suspicion and prejudice that evolves into an incredibly powerful one of friendship, unconditional love, and healing. It shows us the characters' struggles, their imperfections, and their journey to confide in, trust, and finally lean on each other. It shows us that our bonds with one another are the most powerful thing we have, and that there are people who will accept us no matter the mistakes we've made, and it says to hold on until we find them. The topics Umineko explores equally include how Japanese society changed post-World War II, as well as people being rich people being awful, money, being part of the upper classes, having lots of money, being rich. Okay, but actually, while it's fascinating seeing this one family's complex history set against the backdrop of a country and its evolution through the eras, Umineko goes more introspective in its commentary. While I'm convinced Higurashi was essentially written to specifically deconstruct the dating sim genre, Umineko is a story that looks to comment on the wider relationship between author and reader. The structure of a mystery, the expectations that puts on the audience, the ways the author can exploit those, the constantly shifting experience of perceiving a story even as the author is still writing it. There's a meme somewhere about how much visual novel authors love Scrooge Cat, and that's Umineko. It's like watching magic being performed before your eyes and trying to catch the trick. If none of this is making much sense, it's because it's not really an experience that can be captured in words. It's also a tribute to the immense power fiction has to positively impact people's lives. the way it can pull you through the darkest of times, the way you can always choose to rewrite your own narrative no matter how sure you are there will be an unhappy ending. Both Higurashi and Umineko make heavy use of unreliable narrators.
That was the one thing that I really did like about the Higurashi series, was the fact that they're basically all unreliable narrators, which makes it even harder to know like if what you are seeing on the screen is actually the truth. Especially when I first watched Higurashi, the end really like shocked me because it made you realize what was even the truth at that point.
Pulling you deep into the mysteries at the heart of their stories in the question arcs until you don't know up from down, and then pulling apart the curtains inch by tantalizing inch in the answer arcs until everything becomes clear as day in a masterfully cathartic fashion. Kikonia then is the culmination of everything that makes When They Cry great.
See, do you see the fizz? It's basically the same like artwork style as the beginning, and it's just so cute.
A vivid and unprecedentedly diverse cast of characters full of clashing emotions and ideals they're not afraid to voice even if they love each other. Incredibly delicate yet razor-sharp commentary on current affairs centered around how we as a species are dealing with the reality of our imminent extinction brought on by our own actions, and the meta-narrative this series loves so much, the question put directly to us as readers: what power do we hold to change things? What should we hold dear, trust and believe in a world where all seems to lead to the same dead end? Kikonia sets When They Cry's core themes and conflicts against a global stage. Every political or societal debate or idea you can conceivably think of has probably already been covered. This is a story to get people talking about what our futures look like, to get them talking about human rights issues, climate change, international relations, and the ever-looming prospect of another global conflict. The mistakes humans seem doomed to continue to make. At the same time, Kikonia isn't giving us the solutions. In the end, it's doing what When They Cry has always forced us to. Whether it's the world around us or the person we see in the mirror, it calls us to face up to our reality, even when we're afraid.
I think that's very much true. I agree with her. But more than anything, I believe what sets Higurashi series apart from like other mystery, psychological horror, that type of thing, is the fact that because everyone is such an unreliable narrator for the most part, you start to develop basically critical thinking skills through this game. And you have to think for yourself. Like, you don't get spoon-fed by the story on what's going on. You end up being the one to make your own opinions, your own understanding of the story, and then processing it by the time you reach that answer arc. Or at least, I don't think I've actually seen the answer arc myself, but I assume at that point you've already made your own like ideas and theories. And the fact that the readers or viewers or whatever players are able to develop that kind of thought process and just think about all of this in the story before even reaching the answer arc just goes to show that clearly this story wants you to learn how to think for yourself. And if it does pertain to like the political and societal issues that we all face on a daily basis, whether we are aware of it or not, would make a lot of sense that they're trying to make you think for yourself, not be influenced by the various different biased statements and news and all of that stuff without thinking of that, just thinking for yourself and judging on what exactly is the correct answer or not the correct answer. The power that humans are given, the ability to think. I think I very much appreciated that in the manga and anime that I was able to consume for this series. It's not going to be as good as the actual games, but I do believe it still has the positives that the Higurashi series had. Maybe not to the degree that they go into it in the game, obviously, but it still gives you a good appetizer of that experience.
I don't know where this story will lead or how it will end. It's a startlingly sharp and powerful realization of what it feels like to be alive, here and now.
Yes.
So what holds this eclectic series together? If there's anything When They Cry is about, it's finding happiness, having the courage to believe we can amidst the horrors of our world and lives. It's about learning you deserve love and how to reach out. Ryukishi07 portrays the darkest and worst moments of a human's life, then contrasts them with the brilliance of the light at the end of the tunnel. He gives us intimidatingly vast topics through the lens of one individual's experience, and grounds the terror of his works in mundane reality. In Ryukishi07's time as a civil servant, his work was similar to that of a social worker's, and the things he saw and dealt with heavily influenced the content of his writing. When They Cry features mental illness and abuse as core aspects of its stories. While Ryukishi has done his research and handles these things with great accuracy, nuance and respect, it needs to be said that When They Cry is heavy and painful to read, at times distressing and even triggering.
Yes, I agree with that.
Child abuse, sexual abuse, human experimentation, acute depictions of hallucinatory and delusional states, self-mutilation, suicide, and a great deal of extreme violence. Now, I'm making this video as someone who is critical of media violence at the best of times. I cover my eyes when I see blood on TV, so if hearing all of that made you question whether this series is for you, I totally get it. I would not be fighting When They Cry's corner if I felt the violence was gratuitous or the topics shoddily handled. It is text only, so you don't ever have to see any of this firsthand.
That's good.
I'm of the opinion that the anime adaptations kind of inevitably contradicted the core messages of the series by changing that. But returning to the point...
Yeah, I can see why she thinks that the anime is like that. To be honest, it was very gory. A lot more than I expected. But I do think it still did serve its purpose well. But some people are just not capable of imagining what's actually happening or what could be happening. So I do think there is some level of this is fine, like gore-wise. But at the same time, they probably didn't need to make it that gory. But I guess it just depends on the person's tolerance. Because back when I was in middle school, I was okay with it. But then I don't think I would be able to rewatch it because of the gore. It was a little excessive in some ways, but it served its purpose well at the same time. So I have like mixed feelings about the anime adaptation because of it. At least it has good music though, right?
When They Cry doesn't deal in this kind of content without purpose. It does not deserve the edgy reputation it has found itself. Instead, it carries a strong message of hope and perseverance, and is both beautiful and powerful. It strikes right to the heart of what it's like to live with mental illness and trauma, simply what it is to suffer, and somehow finds a way to uplift and empower you, no matter how destructive those experiences. Without disrespecting the gravity of what its characters go through, it proves they can get through it. It's a series that changes lives. It certainly changed mine. If you're still on the fence, I'm going to make things a little more succinct for you. Do you like brilliantly written characters? This is your series. Yes, that includes the women. In fact, it's carried by them. How about canon?
Actually, that's another thing. One of the things I appreciated about this series, one, the female characters are the ones that move the story significantly and carry it quite well. And two, they're very much 3D, like the characters themselves. Obviously, like the anime might not do a very good job at that, like portraying the 3D-ness due to like budget and the amount of episodes they're given. But I do think that this series is one of the series that portrays female characters very well. Most likely, mostly in the game, but I still do think that like the manga does a pretty good job too, compared to like the anime. The anime was good, but like the music, sound design was all good, but I do feel like they could have improved like the storytelling presentation of the story, I guess. I don't really know how to explain it, but that's one of the things I was kind of iffy about. I mean, back in middle school, I had no problems because I was still a kid, so it's not like I'm going to be that picky about what I watch or criticize a lot of things. But as an adult now, thinking back on it and remembering my experience, yeah, they definitely could have done better. But at least the music's good, right? That's like pretty much one of the best things that came out of it.
LGBT characters. They come by the dozen. Found families, friendship in general, wholesome family relationships, complicated family relationships, romance of the heartwarming.
One other thing I wanted to discuss or at least mention is maybe because, or actually no, it is because I forgot his name, but the author worked basically as a social worker. I think because of that, it made it even more real. Like obviously the drawing and the art style and everything looks very cartoony and fake, or at least it's not realistic style because it's anime. But because of the portrayal of mental illness and abuse and things like that, it felt even more real, which is why it made it scarier. Because usually there's like a level of, I guess, fantasy in series, even if it's mystery, even if there's psychological horror, it doesn't feel like you're there. But then for some reason, there's something about Higurashi, especially. I'm not really talking about Umineko right here because that's not as realistic to many people, unless you're rich, maybe. But for Higurashi in particular, it's even scarier because none of these people are like super special. They're like you and me in some ways. And this can happen to anyone, essentially. So when you unravel the abuse, just the pain that they're going through, it feels so real to the point of almost triggering others. What if they had a real life experience like that? And the fact that it's so real makes it such a scary experience to watch it on screen or to experience it in a game. Maybe it's a little better when it's in a game, but it still feels real. And I think that's one of the strongest strengths that Higurashi series has, which is the realism depicted compared to like maybe some other series that also try to depict it. I mean, obviously there has been a lot, like there's probably over like 2,000 anime titles and a lot more manga and games now. But at least back then, that was one of the hardest series to consume because of how real it felt, despite how innocent the characters looked. I think it was even more disturbing because the characters look so cute and, super anime-like. But that's just how I feel.
And heartbreaking varieties. Basically every type of relationship humans can conceivably have. Yep. Murder mysteries, political and military drama, supernatural and psychological horror, slice-of-life antics, slapstick comedy, shoujo-esque romance, steampunk dystopian science fiction, cop drama, contemporary fantasy, metafiction, occult detective stories. There is somehow literally everything here.
No, that's true.
As far as other hooks, because yes, I'm not done, there's the sound. Let's not forget these are sound novels after all. Ironically, back when Nukishi and Co were making the games out of his apartment circa 2002, they didn't have much to work with here. It was only as the hype grew that actual reputable musicians began to swamp the project en masse. Eventually, both Higurashi and Umineko were released on multiple consoles fully voiced, and the casts were equally star-studded. These are just some of the voices you can expect to hear. I'm so glad you asked. If you're gonna do that, you should probably know Higurashi and Umineko each take about 100 hours to read. I can't stop you from just watching the anime instead, or in Higurashi's case, going through those billion other adaptations I mentioned, but I can strongly discourage you from it. Umineko's anime isn't even complete. Half of the story is still missing because nobody really wanted a second season after what happened with the first one.
Yeah, the music was good though.
While some of the adaptations are better than others, there's no other version of these stories that will give you the true intended experience besides the originals. They are worth the time. While the games are still only available on PC outside of Japan, you can very easily patch them with the shiny updated graphics and voice acting from the console releases thanks to the folks over at 7th Mod. The games are very affordable for how much you get out of them. In Higurashi's case, you can just buy the first arc, and if it turns out you're not interested, you'll only be about £5 or $6 poorer for it. I would also...
That's also one thing I actually appreciate, because lately a lot of games have or at least from what I've seen, seem to be very expensive. Especially if you don't know if you're gonna actually like it, and if you can't even return it. I know for Steam you can, but I know for others you can't. So if that's gonna be the case, then I wish more games would like put it into parts so that it'll at least stop others from continuing with it if it's just not their thing. And instead of being $70 poorer, they'll just be like $5 poorer, as this person said.
I strongly recommend starting with Higurashi, even if Umineko or Kikonia sound more interesting to you. At the end of the day, if you enjoy one, you're liable to want to read the others, and while Umineko isn't a direct sequel, it does build on its predecessor in many ways that deeply enrich the reader's understanding and experience of both stories if read in the release order. Right now, Kikonia is looking to be the same way. There's also some pretty glaring, thinly veiled major spoilers for Higurashi and Umineko, and these are not stories you want to go into spoiled if at all possible. Let me also warn you now that you will find spoilers in abundance anywhere on the internet that you can find anything about the series, so tread carefully. And that's about it.
Higurashi fans are very passionate about this game.
Right now, Kikonia Phase 2 is slated for release somewhere around May 2020.
Spoil a lot.
That's plenty of time for you to at least start getting up to speed with the series and jump on for the ride as we see just what Ryukishi has in store for us in the coming years. I hope I'll see you there.
This was a very good guide in navigating Higurashi series. I didn't expect that there was a third one, mostly because I was out of the, I guess, Higurashi series field, I'm not really sure, area for a long time. So it was nice to know that there's a third series, but I actually don't think that I'm going to be playing the games myself, mostly because I really don't have time. But it was wonderful to learn a bit more on how it was produced, just the history of it, and the connections between all the series. I think that was the most valuable thing that I got from this video. I also really liked the way that this person edited their video. It was really nice and fun to watch. But overall, it makes me hope that I can get people to suggest a good video that dives a bit more deeper into the actual story and lore bits of the game. I mean, obviously it's a novel, so the entire thing is a story, but you know what I mean. Either recaps or things like that would be very fun to check out. So if you do have one in mind, as long as it's under 4 hours, I would love to watch it and react to it. And of course, make sure to support the original video. And if you enjoyed watching me react to this, then be sure to give it a like, comment down below, subscribe, and share. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.